So good day everyone. Today we will be talking about the integumentary system or the skin including some of its appendages. The functions of the skin, number 1, it protects the deeper tissues from mechanical damage, chemical damage, bacterial damage, ultraviolet radiation, thermal damage, and desiccations. In the sense of bacterial damage, the skin protects or the skin serves as the outermost covering and serving as the primary barrier of the body against the external world, which includes the presence of bacteria. It also functions as an aid in body heat loss or heat retention through the opening or closing of the pores, as well as to the production of sweat. It also aids in the excretion of urea and uric acid, also owing to the presence of pores. And lastly, it aids in the synthesis of vitamin D. Vitamin D is already inherently present inside the body, but it is activated by the ultraviolet rays of the sun. Once the sun hits the skin, the photoreceptors in the skin will trigger a cascade of responses to activate your vitamin D. It is not true that the sun is the one who's giving our skin vitamin D, because vitamin D is already present inside our body, but it has to be activated. Vitamin D is stored in the kidneys, inactive in the kidneys, but it is activated once the skin is hit by the ultraviolet rays of the sun. Therefore, it aids in the conversion of an inactive vitamin D to active vitamin D. The skin, as the covering of the body, serves as the organ with the largest surface area. Of course, as it is covering the entire of the body, it has to have a bigger scope or a bigger area. It has to cover a bigger area. Structures involve the epidermis as the outermost part, the dermis as the middle or the inner part, and the hypodermis or the subcutaneous area. Sub meaning under, and cutaneous meaning skin. So it's under the skin. It is technically not a part of the skin, but it anchors the skin to the underlying organs. Your hypodermis is usually made up of adipocytes or your adipose tissue. The epidermis is made up of stratified squamous epithelium that is capable of keratinizing. Again, from our last discussion, keratin serves as an outer covering and serves as protection. It is avascular. It means that there is no blood supply of its own. That is why if you scrape the dermis or when you scratch yourself, kumigakatol, if you scratch yourself, your epidermis does not bleed off because it is avascular and it has no blood supply. Most cells are keratinocytes or your keratin cells. The keratinocytes produces keratin, and keratin is a fibrous protein that makes the epidermis a tough protective layer. So we have the different layers of the skin: stratum corneum, stratum lucidum, stratum granulosum, stratum spinosum, and stratum basale. For you to easily memorize them, we have a mnemonic. It's come, let's, get, sun, burnt. Come, stratum corneum, the outermost layer. Let, stratum lucidum, which is The second layer, get stratum granulosum, sun stratum spinosum, and burnt stratum basale. Sometimes the stratum basale is termed as the stratum germinativum, as its purpose is to germinate. We will go to that later. Stratum basale is the layer. It is this layer here, the basal layer, that contains only epidermal cells that receive adequate nourishment via diffusion of nutrients from the dermis. Your stratum basale is also the layer that continuously germinates. That is why it is called stratum germinativum, because it continuously germinates or produces new cells. Amo ni siyang gasige lang provide new cells. This is the layer that provides new cells nga. These cells are formed in the basal layer, or stratum basale, and they migrate upwards to replace the epithelial cells that are sloughed off. Meaning ang gakataktak. How? When you scratch, when you're abraded, or even they do slough off spontaneously. Gakataktak lang sila spontaneously. Next, we have your melanocytes. Your melanocytes are the cells producing melanin that are found chiefly in stratum basale. Melanin is the protein that gives pigment that ranges from yellow to brown to black. It is not the number of melanin that is present that identifies the skin color of the person, but it is rather the amount of melanocytes present in one person. So we have freckles and moles, or your lentigens, wherein melanin is concentrated in one spot. Melanin here is concentrated. However, moles, or in the medical term, we call it a nevus, can sometimes become malignant. Sometimes. Because most of the time, they are concentrated lang naman in one part and they are benign, meaning they are not cancerous. Okay? You will know that a nevus is quite cancerous when its spread is very aggressive and when it has already vascularization. Nga kung mapilas lang siya gamay, mableed siya. That is a sign of malignancy. Freckles, on another hand, are patches of melanin that are concentrated in one spot. There is no known pathology when it comes to freckles. It is just that your melanin is concentrated in one spot. The dermis is a layer of dense connective tissue. It is strong and stretchy. It envelopes that helps the body to be held together. Let me go back a little bit to the layers of the skin, layers of the epidermis. Stratum corneum is the outermost layer and it is the keratinized layer. Your stratum lucidum is a small layer of clear cells. Stratum lucidum is not present in thick skin, and it is present rather in thick skin, and it is absent in thin skin. Okay? Your stratum lucidum is present in your thick skin and it is absent in thin skin. Thin skin such as your palms and the soles of the feet. Basically, these are the ones that do not have hair. Your stratum granulosum, or the granular layer, is the one that contains tenocytes, keratinocytes, and melanocytes. As they phagocytize or ginait nila. Phagocytosis is the process of eating, the cells eating. So the cells eat this melanin and keratin. That's why there are granules in your stratum granulosum. The stratum spinosum, or the spiny layer, basically it contains spines. The cells contain spines, and your stratum basale, of course, as we have discussed a while ago, it is the layer that continuously multiplies. Moving forward, we have two regions of the dermis, the papillary area and the reticular area. This is the dermis here, and the papillary area is located in the upper dermal region, and the reticular areas are found in the deeper or the deepest layer of the skin. You can see that their tissue structure is dense. To be specific, it is dense, irregular connective tissue. The papillary layer is the layer wherein it is uneven and has a finger-like projections called the dermal papillae. It is also the layer that forms your fingerprints. That's why if you can look at your fingerprints, it is irregular. There are areas that are raised, and there are areas that are depressed. It's because of your papillary layer. It also contains the touch receptors, or your Meissner's corpuscles, which is sensitive to light touch. Okay, then you have your Pacinian corpuscle, which is the one that causes or that senses pressure or deep touch. Your Pacinian corpuscles are the ones that are activated when you are pinched, while your Meissner's are the ones that are sensed or that are sensing the sensation of being tickled. So kung hinihiti ka, it's your Meissner's corpuscles that sends these messages into the brain, telling your brain that you're being tickled. So this is your fingerprints. These are all attributed to your papillary layer. Your reticular layer is the one that contains blood vessels, the sweat, and the oil glands. It is also the one that contains deep pressure receptors, or your Pacinian corpuscles. Skin color is usually influenced by emotional stimuli. We have redness or erythema, which can be sensed by embarrassment, fever, hypertension, inflammation, or allergy. This is usually because of increased blood flow to that area. If there is increased blood flow, of course, there is increased red blood cells. Your red blood cells are the ones that's giving the redness when it comes to erythema. Pallor or blanching can also become because of fever, anger, anemia, low blood pressure, and impaired blood flow. If there is decreased blood flow, there would obviously be decreased red blood cells that would cause you paleness. Palamutla. Jaundice or yellow cast is because of liver disorder. Jaundice makes you yellowish. This is because of the presence of bilirubin. Next, you have your bruises, your blackening, or your blue marks, which could be indicative of sites where blood has escaped or clotted, or your hematoma. In our term, lagob. It could be because of vitamin C deficiency or hemophilia. Because if you are hemophilic, you would increase your bleeding. Mas dasig ka mag-bleed. If you increase bleeding, there would also be increased RBC leakage. So if there is RBC leakage, you would form hematoma. Malagob-lagob ka. So that is why you will have the blackening or the bluish marks or the bruises in your arm. So now let's go to the appendages of the skin, your cutaneous glands, the hairs, the hair follicles, and of course the nails. Cutaneous glands, all are exocrine glands that releases secretion to the skin via ducts, your sebaceous glands through the oil glands, or your sweat glands named as your sudoriferous glands. Sebaceous glands are found adjacent or lateral to your hair follicle or your hair strand. It produces sebum, which keeps the skin soft and moist. Sweat glands naman are found deeper in the layer. It can also be found laterally to the hair follicle. And your eccrine sweat glands produces sweat, and your apocrine sweat glands produces fatty acids. These fatty acids are prone to oxidation that gives you the body odor or the foul-smelling odor after heavy exercise kay sweat ka. And the presence of fat in your sweat oxidizes it and gives you the body odor. Hair and follicles. The hair is produced by the hair follicle. The root is enclosed in a hair follicle, and the shaft is the part projecting from the surface of the scalp. This is the hair shaft. And inside is the hair follicle. The hair follicle is a compound structure which contains your erector pili muscles or your smooth muscle cells that causes goosebumps. when your erector pili here, when your erector pili muscles are activated, it contracts so that the hairs, for example, as erector pili muscles are relaxed, the hair is flimsy or floppy siya. But when it is contracted, ang hair gets stand. Amo siyang goosebumps. Next, your nails. The nails are scale-like modifications of the epidermis. So here are the different parts of the hair, the nails. You have your lunula, which is the crescent shape area of the nail. Then you have your proximal nail fold. You have your distal edge of the nail plate, your lateral nail folds, the cuticle or the eponychium, which protects the nail from outside or external adverse conditions. It serves as a protection. So, hemostatic imbalances or some of the pathologies of the skin. First is we have decubitus ulcers or bed ulcers. It is the restriction of normal blood supply of the skin in usually bedridden patient. This is because of the force of gravity that is imposed upon the skin. Wherein, imagine if someone is lying down in a supine position, gigda lang da siya. And then the pressure of the gravity forces down, the force of gravity rather is pushed down towards the patient. The resistance coming from the laying down also contradicts that force, which forms the ulcer. It compresses the blood vessels here as it is pushed down. It compresses the blood vessels so that no blood supply. Wala blood supply nga galabot sa inaangat area. Remember that the top layer of your skin is avascular. Wala na siya supply sang blood. It cannot be nourished or it cannot be intensely nourished as compared to those which are vascularized. So without the presence of vascularization or without the presence of blood, so it will be devoid of its nutrients. It will be deprived of nutrients. And as it is compressed, you form or there is the formation of your decubitus ulcers. The remedy to this is positioning or changing the positioning of the patient from time to time. Like for example, after 4 hours lying down in a supine position, after that, ipaprone mo naman siya for another 4 hours. For example, kung hindi siya makaprone, lateral. Or the lean to the side bala. Gagalok siya to the side. or lateral to the right. After 4 hours, pwede man lateral to the left. Para para ma-relieve lang ang pressure, hindi ma-concentrate ang pressure to one part of the body. Next, whiteheads and blackheads are sebaceous glands duct that become blocked by sebum. Blackheads are whiteheads that are oxidized, which makes them black. Acne is an active infection in the sebaceous gland. It is very common, especially in teenagers whose sebaceous glands are very active due to the increase in hormones due to puberty. Having acne at this stage is very normal, and it only becomes pathologic once these sebaceous glands, once these oil glands are infected. It becomes a comedone when it is already infiltrated by bacteria. It is not true that acne is caused by eating a lot of oils, nuts, chicken, whatever you are allergic to. It is not aggravated by milk, by too much sugar. No, it is not the one, or these are not the ones that produces acne. However, I am not telling you also that pwede na kamo ni kapag gusto ka onsang ini nga mga substances. They have a relation to acne in such a way that these are pro-inflammatory. This would increase the inflammation of your lesions or your acne lesions. This would improve, or this would increase the inflammatory response of the body. Mas pahubagon niya ka. It aggravates more your acne, but it doesn't start the progression of acne, because acne, whether you like it or not, will really be happening to you. As you grow, it is a normal part of physiology, but most importantly, it is also how you are going to take care of your body when acne starts to arrive. Usually, acne, the prescription or the direction of acne is usually washing your face good. It's religious washing of the face that keeps the acne stabilized in such a way that it is tapered, hindi siya maglala. So seborrhea is another pathology that it's called the cradle cap in infants. It begins in the scalp as pink raised lesions that gradually form a yellow to brown crust. Seborrhea is the improper activation of your seborrheic glands, which causes an increased fatty, oily, and erosive lesions in the skin. Usually, seborrhea or seborrheic dermatitis happens in babies because of the overactivation of the seborrheic glands. So that ends our discussion for the skin or the integumentary system. Please answer your activity paper for this part.